What happens when one of the biggest names in basketball decides he's had enough of the criticism surrounding Caitlin Clark? That question exploded after LeBron James publicly defended Clark, while the debate around her treatment became impossible to ignore. And here's where the story gets interesting. The internet has circulated headlines claiming that LeBron destroyed The View after an allegedly disgusting attack on Caitlin Clark. But the verified record tells a more nuanced story. In May 2024, LeBron spoke openly about Clark's experience on his Mind the Game podcast with JJ Redick. He said he was rooting for her because he had experienced the pressure of entering professional basketball with enormous expectations himself. He also criticized people who seemed determined to prevent young athletes from enjoying their opportunity. And weeks earlier, during Iowa's championship game against South Carolina, LeBron had already posted a blunt message telling people who didn't appreciate Clark's game to stay away from the hate. Then came The View. Sunny Hostin discussed Clark's popularity and argued that her whiteness, attractiveness, and perceived privilege contributed to her appeal. That sparked a much larger debate about race, marketing, and the explosive growth of women's basketball. So did LeBron actually confront The View directly? No verified evidence shows that he did. But his defense of Caitlin Clark was very real. And that makes this story even more fascinating. Because the real question isn't whether LeBron walked onto The View set and destroyed everyone. The real question is, why did one of basketball's biggest stars feel the need to defend Caitlin Clark in the first place? Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA carrying expectations unlike almost any rookie before her. She wasn't simply a highly drafted player. She arrived as one of the most recognizable names in women's basketball. Her Iowa career had already turned her into a national superstar, and the attention followed her directly into Indiana. But with that attention came criticism. Some critics questioned whether she was being overhyped. Others questioned why so much media attention surrounded one player. And then the conversation became even more complicated when commentators began discussing race, sexuality, beauty, and privilege as possible reasons for Clark's popularity. That was the environment in which LeBron James spoke out. And LeBron understood the situation better than almost anyone. He had entered the NBA in 2003 as a teenager with enormous expectations. Every performance was analyzed. Every mistake became a headline. Every loss became evidence that he wasn't ready. So when he watched Clark experiencing something similar, he recognized the pressure. During his Mind the Game podcast, LeBron explained that he was rooting for Clark because he had walked that road before. That comparison was important. LeBron wasn't saying Clark should be immune from criticism. In fact, he acknowledged that she was entering a team sport and that expectations had to be realistic. The Indiana Fever had struggled before Clark arrived. The rookie couldn't magically fix every problem herself. But LeBron's larger point was about the hostility surrounding her. He questioned why grown adults seemed so determined to make life difficult for young athletes simply trying to pursue their dreams. And that wasn't the first time he'd defended her. During the 2024 NCAA championship game, LeBron posted a direct message aimed at Clark's critics. He essentially said that if people didn't appreciate her game, they should stay away from the negativity. That message immediately went viral. Because this wasn't some random basketball commentator. This was LeBron James, one of the most recognizable athletes on earth. And he was openly telling people to stop hating on Caitlin Clark. Then, just weeks later, Clark entered the WNBA. The Fever started 0-4. And suddenly the criticism intensified. People were asking why the supposedly generational prospect wasn't immediately dominating professional basketball. LeBron pushed back against that too. He pointed out that Indiana had been struggling before Clark arrived and reminded people that basketball is still a team sport. That distinction is critical. LeBron wasn't claiming Clark was perfect. He was saying, "Give the young player time." And that message would become even more important as the public debate became increasingly personal. While Clark's rookie season was becoming a national phenomenon, the discussion moved beyond basketball media. It reached mainstream television. On The View, Sonny Hostin discussed why Clark had become so commercially successful. Hostin acknowledged that Clark was bringing attention and money into the WNBA, but argued that her whiteness and attractiveness contributed to her ability to connect with a broad audience. Those comments triggered a huge reaction. Supporters argued that the conversation was legitimate. They pointed out that race and representation can influence the way athletes are marketed and perceived. Critics, meanwhile, believed the discussion minimized Clark's basketball achievements. And that's where the argument became explosive. Because Clark didn't become famous simply because she was white. She had produced extraordinary basketball numbers at Iowa. She became the all-time leading scorer in Major Division I women's basketball. She made deep NCAA tournament runs. She hit logo threes. She created highlight reel passes. And she built a massive audience before ever entering the WNBA. So when commentators started discussing her popularity primarily through identity, many fans felt uncomfortable. They wanted the conversation to be about basketball. But there was another uncomfortable reality. Clark's arrival really was changing the economics and visibility of women's basketball. LeBron himself acknowledged this. During his podcast discussion, he said Clark was helping create major opportunities for the WNBA and warned people not to misunderstand her impact. That doesn't mean every claim about Clark's popularity is wrong. Marketing is complicated. Race can influence media coverage. Beauty can influence celebrity culture. And different athletes can receive different levels of attention. But none of those things erase athletic achievement. That's where the debate became so emotional. Some people heard discussions about privilege and believed critics were attacking Clark personally. Others heard those discussions and believed they were simply analyzing structural factors. And somewhere in the middle was Caitlin Clark herself. A young athlete trying to play basketball. The more the debate intensified, the more difficult it became for Clark to simply exist as a basketball player. Every foul became a statement. Every missed shot became evidence. Every celebration became a personality debate. And every viral moment created another argument. That's exactly why LeBron's support mattered. He wasn't just defending Clark's statistics. He was defending the idea that a young athlete should be allowed to develop without being crushed by a non-stop media war. And then another basketball legend joined the conversation. Charles Barkley. Barkley publicly criticized what he saw as unnecessary hostility toward Clark and argued that WNBA players should appreciate the attention and financial opportunities she was generating. Suddenly, this wasn't just Caitlin Clark versus her critics. It was becoming a much bigger conversation involving NBA legends, WNBA players, television personalities and fans. And that brings us to the most important question. Was the criticism actually helping women's basketball? Or was it tearing the league apart? Here's the part that often gets lost in the viral headlines. LeBron James wasn't simply saying, "Caitlin Clark is great." He was talking about something much bigger. He was talking about what happens when a young athlete becomes famous faster than people expect. LeBron knew that experience personally. He was a teenager when he entered the NBA. The expectations were enormous. People questioned whether he was ready. Some teammates reportedly doubted what he could contribute. And LeBron explained that he recognized similar pressure surrounding Clark. That's why his defense of Clark carried more weight than a random celebrity endorsement. He understood the psychology. Imagine being 22 years old. You enter professional basketball. Millions of people are watching. Every mistake is clipped. Every bad game becomes a trending topic. Then commentators debate whether you're overrated. Then people debate why you're popular. Then people debate your race. Then people debate whether you're getting special treatment. And all you're trying to do is play basketball. That's the environment Clark entered. And LeBron basically said, "Let her play." That's the real message. He also made an important point about Clark's individual responsibility. He encouraged her not to get consumed by everything being said about her, and to simply enjoy playing. That's advice coming from someone who spent decades dealing with public criticism. And there's another layer. LeBron didn't claim that Clark should never be criticized. Criticism is part of professional sports. If Clark has a bad game, analysts can discuss it. If she makes a bad decision, commentators can analyze it. If her team loses, people can question strategy. That's normal. The problem begins when basketball criticism becomes personal hostility. And that distinction is incredibly important. Because saying, "Caitlin needs to improve her defense," is basketball analysis. Saying, "Caitlin doesn't deserve to be successful," is something completely different. LeBron's comments were essentially pushing people toward the first category and away from the second. And that's why his message resonated with so many fans. The debate surrounding Clark also revealed something fascinating about women's basketball. The WNBA had spent years trying to grow its audience. Then Clark arrived and suddenly millions of new people were paying attention. That brought more television viewers, more social media engagement, more sponsorship attention, more mainstream coverage. But it also brought new arguments. People who had never watched the WNBA before suddenly had opinions about everything. And that's both a blessing and a problem. Because growth means more attention. More attention means more criticism. And more criticism means more controversy. The question is whether the league can handle that attention without allowing the controversy to overshadow the actual players. LeBron appeared to understand that. He didn't need to become Clark's spokesperson. He simply recognized what was happening. A young player was under extraordinary pressure. And he believed people should give her room to grow. That was the heart of his message. But the controversy surrounding the view wasn't going away. If anything, it was becoming bigger. Because now the debate wasn't simply, "Is Caitlin Clark good?" It was, "Why is Caitlin Clark so popular?" And that question opened a much larger conversation about race, representation, marketing, and women's sports. Caitlin Clark's popularity didn't happen for just one reason. That's probably the biggest lesson from the entire controversy. It would be too simplistic to say she became famous because of race. It would also be too simplistic to pretend identity has nothing to do with sports marketing. The reality is more complicated. Clark had an extraordinary college career. She played an exciting style of basketball. She attempted shots from distances most players wouldn't even consider. She became one of the most productive scorers and passers in women's college basketball history. She played in major televised games. And she reached consecutive national championship games. Those achievements created a massive audience before she ever entered the WNBA. Then the Indiana Fever selected her number 1 overall. Suddenly, that audience had a professional team to follow. That's why her rookie season became such a phenomenon. But with fame came polarization. Some fans saw Clark as the future of women's basketball. Others believed the media was giving her too much attention. Some players embraced her. Others publicly criticized aspects of the attention surrounding her. And commentators began debating why the audience connected with her so strongly. That is where The View entered the story. Sonny Hostin's comments about Clark's whiteness and attractiveness became part of a much broader debate over representation in women's sports. But the danger is turning a complicated conversation into a simple accusation. Clark's popularity can involve multiple factors at once. Her race may influence how certain audiences perceive her. Her appearance may influence marketing. Her personality may influence fans. Her basketball ability clearly matters. Her Iowa success matters. The timing of her arrival matters. The WNBA's existing audience matters. And social media matters. All of those things can coexist. That's why the debate became so difficult. People wanted one explanation. But there wasn't one. And LeBron's comments provide an important counterbalance. Instead of obsessing over why Clark was famous, he focused on what she was actually doing. Playing basketball. Trying to adjust to the professional game. Trying to win. And trying to handle unprecedented expectations. That's a much healthier way to look at the situation. Because Clark didn't choose every headline written about her. She didn't control every television discussion. She didn't control every social media post. But she did control how she played. And that's exactly what LeBron encouraged her to focus on. So when people say, LeBron destroyed The View, the verified story is more complicated. There was no confirmed on-air confrontation where LeBron walked into The View and shut down the hosts. Instead, LeBron independently defended Clark during a period when criticism of her was becoming a national conversation. And that defense became part of a larger media narrative. That's actually more interesting than the viral headline. Because it shows how quickly women's basketball had entered mainstream culture. A WNBA rookie was being discussed by television hosts. NBA legends were defending her. Sports analysts were debating her impact. Fans were arguing about her identity. And suddenly, Caitlin Clark wasn't simply a basketball player. She had become a symbol. And once an athlete becomes a symbol, everything gets more complicated. That's the real story behind the headline. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think LeBron James was right to defend Caitlin Clark against the non-stop criticism surrounding her? And what did you think about the discussion on The View? There is an important distinction here. LeBron really did defend Clark, both during her Iowa career and after she entered the WNBA. He publicly told critics to stay away from the hate and later explained that he understood the pressure she was facing because he'd experienced something similar himself. But there is no verified evidence that LeBron directly confronted The View in the dramatic way some viral YouTube headlines suggest. So now tell me, was the media too harsh on Caitlin Clark, or was the criticism fair game for a superstar athlete? Drop your opinion in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more Caitlin Clark, WNBA, and basketball stories. Because this debate is nowhere near over.